welcome to the page, or welcome back, I guess, if you've been following along for a couple weeks now. My name is Madison, and as some of you may know, I own and operate Brew City Blooms, a very small-scale flower farm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The plan for this page is to share garden updates, show you some arranging tips when the garden is in full bloom, and then also share some insight into our home renovation that we're going through right now. But since the entire flower field is covered in a couple feet of snow and we aren't making the quickest progress on our bathroom renovation, I thought I would instead show you how to make a bouquet bag. So you may be wondering, what is a bouquet bag? I didn't know Madison sewed. I didn't know I sewed either until about a month ago. I was watching Paige Wassell's YouTube, which if you haven't checked out her page, she's amazing if you love interiors and home decor, and she's just really fun and funny to watch. And she was showing us how to make pinch pleat curtains using very elementary sewing. I don't know how else to describe it. And I thought maybe I could make some curtains for our home. So I ordered a machine and I made a bunch of curtains, and I actually made these pants even that I'm wearing, very Donnie inspired. And I started to think about a bouquet bag and thought that maybe I could make my own. So let me show you the first prototype I made. This is the first iteration of my bouquet bag, and essentially what it is it's a bag, and you can drop your bouquet in the top, and I'll show you what that actually looks like here in just a second. And then you use this tie to secure your bouquet in place, and then you can just toss it over your shoulder, and you can walk around your farmer's market or wherever you might be without damaging your bouquet. The amount of times I have been at a farmer's market and I see people walking around with their arm out like this trying to protect their blooms, or even worse, shoving their bouquet in a big tote bag or under a stroller where all the petals are getting bruised before they even have a chance to enjoy them. I mean, I can't even count on my fingers and toes how many times I've seen that. So this is just a very fun, simple tool that you can use to protect your blooms. So while this was the first prototype, I will show you the actual prototype we're going to be making today, and I'll show you what it looks like with a bouquet in it as well. So here is my slightly improved version. This is what I'll be showing you today. It's made out of a really beautiful canvas, and you just take the bigger side of this cylinder. It's just truly an open cylinder there. You can see through it, and you'll grab your bouquet, and you will drop your bouquet in from the top. I like to pull it up where most of the heads of the flowers are protected or somewhat covered. And then there's this loose tie here, and you are just simply going to tie that into a bow, kind of where the stems are. You don't really want to be crushing any foliage or any of the bloom heads, obviously. And once it's secured, you simply toss it over your shoulder. Hopefully you can see with the glare back here, but you have a really cute little bouquet bag that you can carry around. So let's dive into things. The bouquet bag does not call for a lot of materials, which is very nice. You only need about half a yard of fabric. This is just some scrap fabric that I have left over from another project. It's a really beautiful canvas. You're going to want a measuring tape or a tape measure of some sort. I just use standard printer paper for my pattern, and you'll need 4 sheets if you are using standard printer paper, a pen or a writing utensil to sketch out your pattern, and some tape to tape it all together. Scissors to cut your fabric, of course some thread, and your sewing machine or your needle if you're sewing this by hand. You are going to want a safety pin to turn our handle right side out as we get going. And pins are not necessary, but they are definitely helpful for keeping things in place. The first thing you want to do is lay out your printer paper into a large rectangle. I'm then going to take some tape and I'm going to tape those pieces together. Once your paper is taped together nicely, we are going to start on one of the long ends of our pattern paper here, and we're going to make 2 marks 13 inches apart, and we're going to make sure they are centered here. So half of 13 is 6.5, so I'm going to put that in the center of my paper here. I'm going to make 1 mark on this end and then the other right at 13 inches. And then I'm going to connect those 2 dots in a nice line. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure up 15 inches from that line I just made. And I'm going to make a mark. I just realized this ruler is not quite long enough, so I'm going to pull out my trusty tape measure here. Just like we did at the bottom, on the top, I'm going to make 2 dots that are 19 inches apart from each other, and they're going to be centered again. Half of 19 is 9.5, so I'm going to put the 9.5 line on the center of my page, and I am going to mark those 19 inches. And I'm going to use this to connect everything again. So at this point, you should have your line that is 13 inches long at the bottom and your line that is 19 inches long at the top. And those 2 lines should be 15 inches apart from one another. Now I'm going to use my straight edge here and I am going to connect those to make almost a large trapezoid. Once you have those lines connected on the end, you can cut out your pattern piece. Once you have your pattern cut out, we are going to want to fold it in half. We're going to fold that 13-inch side in half and that 19-inch side in half right down the middle. Once it's folded in half, you're going to want to look for that longer edge of the bouquet bag, and we're going to trim just a little bit off the end here just to give it a softer edge. Now just to clarify, this is not along the fold, this is where you can peel back the body of the bouquet bag. I'm going to trim off just about this much. You can see that has softened the edge here. Now that we're done with our pattern, it's time to cut our fabric. I'm going to refer to this as the body of the bouquet bag. We also need to cut some fabric for the tie and for the handle. I like to use bias tape as it gives a little bit more stretch. If you're not familiar, bias tape is fabric that is cut on the bias or cut at a diagonal. Has a little more give to it. It's a little bit easier to turn inside out as well. I will put the measurements for the bias tape up on the screen and we can get to town cutting our fabric. When you're done cutting, you should have 3 pieces. Your main body piece, the bias tape for the tie. Mine is cut at 1.25 inch wide and 32 inches long. And then the bias tape for the handle. Again, this is cut 3 inches wide and 27 inches long. We're going to start with the handle, and we are going to fold this in half hot dog style and right sides together. Eventually we'll turn this right side out, and we are just going to do a straight stitch along the edge with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I like to iron this in half just so that it's a little bit easier to work with. We are going to take that piece and turn it right side out. I like to use a clothespin and I put it right in the seam allowance. And then we take the top of that clothespin and we string it through the center. This is a pretty tedious process, I'm not going to lie. I had to do it for a couple drawstrings and some other projects. It is a lot of push and pull and push and pull. As tedious as it may seem, if you keep going, I promise you will get to the end and we will get it all turned right side out. Once it's turned right side out, you can remove your safety pin and then just give that a nice press again. I like to press mine with the seam going down the middle. Next up is the tie, and we are going to fold and press this just like bias tape. If you've never done this before, I will show you how. I actually got a little tool to make this easier, but I'm going to show you the old-fashioned way. We are going to start by folding this in half and pressing it. Once you have that piece folded in half and pressed, we are going to open it up and we are going to take the raw edges and fold them in about 1/4 of an inch, or you could line them up with that middle fold, and we're going to give them a press. And same thing with that other raw edge, folding it in the middle and then giving it a press. Now that your two raw edges are meeting in the middle, we are going to fold it in half one last time and give it a press. I should mention you want to make sure your right sides are facing out. We are now going to take that piece and stitch along that sandwich side of the fabric, essentially making a drawstring. Once that's done, you should have just a really nice drawstring. We are now going to turn to our main bag piece, and we are going to start by covering these raw edges. I'm going to fold and press 1/4 of an inch in, and then I am going to fold it over again. I am folding that raw edge 1/4 of an inch down and giving it a good press. And then I'm going to go back over that. I'm going to fold it again 1/4 of an inch down and give it another good press, concealing that raw edge inside of our seam here. Now we're going to go and we're going to put a seam along that edge. I like for the seam to be as close to that folded edge as possible. Now we are going to adhere our tie to the body of the bag, and to do that we are going to start by folding the body of the bag in half, wrong sides together, so that the raw edges line up really nicely. Your 13-inch side should be on the bottom and your 19-inch side should be on the top. Once you have the body of your bag folded in half, we want to measure roughly in the middle of this side, 6.5 inches up. I'm just going to mark that with some tailor's chalk. You could use anything to mark that spot. I'm then going to take my tie and I'm going to find the middle of the tie and I'm going to line it up with that spot. I'm going to now pin this in place, but only to the top layer of the bag. I'm not going to pin it through both layers. Hopefully you can see those pins pretty well. I pinned 2 pins off to the side because we're going to go in with a stitch here in the middle, and I want that area to be free when I'm putting it in the sewing machine. You should be able to unfold the body of the bag again. You don't want those sides to be pinned together. We are almost to the finish line. We are going to lay the body of the bag out on the table in front of us, right side facing up. So the side that you adhered that tie to should be facing up. I'm just going to pull that tie up and out of the way so it's not getting caught up in any of our work here. I'm going to take my handle and line it up with that raw edge. I like for my handle to be about 1.5 inches down from the top and about 3 or 3.5 inches from the bottom. The reason I skew the handle more towards that 19-inch side of the bag is that's where a lot of the bulk of your flowers is going to be. There's going to be more weight on that side of the bag, so it just makes it easier to carry. I'm going to pin it in place just so it doesn't get shuffled around when I'm doing my final fold here. It is totally your choice. I also have the seam of the handle facing towards the tie. I feel like the front of the bag then will be the side with that nice finished edge. So now I'm going to take the bag and I am going to fold it over so that both of those raw edges are lining up with each other. Again, right sides facing each other. And I'm going to pin that in place before I do my finishing stitches. Again, because I am such a novice, I kind of pin around those other pins that I placed and then I sneak underneath and remove them. Probably not the best way to do it, but it does keep that handle where we want it to be. So again, I have my raw edges pinned together. The handles are sandwiched in between there, so they'll be included in this stitch, and it's right sides together. We are going to stitch along those raw edges, again with the handle sandwiched in there with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm then going to finish the raw edges with a zigzag stitch. Now this is an unnecessary step, but I like to fold and press that seam back towards the side where the tie is adhered and where we had the handles kind of folded over, just so it stays out of the way. At this point, your bag is done, so you can press out any wrinkles that are bothering you, and you can start using it. Here is one last peek with our finished product. You've made it to the finish line if you've been sewing along, and if you're like me, maybe this is one of the first few things you've ever sewn. You can get to town using this thing. All you're going to do is drop your bouquet in on that bigger side, secure your stems with the tie there, and then you just toss that handle over your shoulder and you can start carrying around your blooms. I appreciate you guys watching and following along. I will be sharing videos on the first and third Fridays of every month, trying to get that right every time. So if you want to subscribe and turn on notifications, all of those things help to keep this page going. I'll see you guys next time.